Hi, I'm really happy to be here with you all. My name is Elizabeth Burke, and I'm just excited that this many people really wanted to talk about this. I must admit, I submitted this on a whim just to challenge myself because it was a topic that was really meaningful to me, and I thought maybe other people want to talk about this, and I didn't know that this many people would want to talk about it. And that's very exciting, and I'm also a tiny bit nervous, but like the good kind of nervous. So I'm just really happy that we're all here today and that we're all making time to dig into this. So first off, just thanks to everyone for coming to Denver Startup Week. We have some amazing sponsors who have generously helped make this event happen, so making sure that we are honoring and thanking them for their participation. This is the People Track, and it's sponsored by Emerge. We got to talk to one of their fabulous folks here. And yeah, just a reminder, if you are here, you are agreeing to the code of conduct, you're agreeing to be recorded, and all sorts of other fun things, okay? We've got, again, our sponsors here, going through them, appreciative of all of them at all their various levels of sponsorship. More fabulous sponsors here. And so before we kind of get going, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I purposefully did not share about myself in the bio. I'm glad it made you laugh. That was the point. Because I didn't want us to believe that any specific person needs to have more or less credentials to talk about this. We're all just humans, and we all have a relationship to work, and we all have a right to explore that relationship. And I even questioned myself a little bit, like, oh gosh, who am I to talk about this? And then I just realized, well, who am I to not talk about this? Like, there's no reason I shouldn't talk about this. And I've had a meaningful experience, and that makes me qualified to talk about this. So just kind of encouraging you as you are thinking about things in your life, where do you hide behind your perceived lack of qualifications? It's a lot of places for many of us. So yeah, I'm a meditator, like occasionally. I love paddleboarding. I learned how to make banana bread because I'm really great at forgetting that I bought bananas. So that's one of my great qualities. Also really horrible at checking the weather. So I just become a very flexible and adaptable person in various circumstances. So I'm going to encourage you right now to introduce yourself to 2 to 3 people around you. And I'm going to encourage you to not lead with your title. Like, I'm going to ask you if you can hold it in for this 1 hour. Can you think about who you are beyond your title and beyond what you do in your daily role? Okay, so I'm going to let you folks go ahead and turn to someone around you, a couple people, introduce yourself, and share a little bit about yourself really quick. Sure, hi, I'm Elizabeth. Nice to meet you, Trisha.
How are you today?
I'm nervous but excited.
I mean,
yeah.
you're doing really
Thank
well.
you.
So
I appreciate
it's all
that.
the energy.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. What's something I should know about you?
I travel a lot.
Okay,
And I
for
think
fun?
For fun.
Okay, question mark?
Fun. I mean, like, how do I do this without not talking about work? But once I graduated university,
Yeah?
I was just like, I don't want to be in the U.S. And
So you travel?
I travel.
I love that.
And work
Favorite
today.
places?
New Zealand's great.
Okay.
Mom grew up in Hawaii, so Hawaii's always a little
Love
bit
it.
home.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Awesome.
So I think something I'm known for is that, like, when things get tough, I just travel.
Okay, so you're like, I see a new place to change my perspective.
Yep.
I love that.
Job's not working, I'm out finding another, but it's not like a little move, it's always like
You make big
I jump.
changes. Okay, I'm excited.
What are you known for? I mean, other than not checking the weather.
I'm also known for leaving avocado pits in people's freezers because you can turn them into a natural ink.
Yeah.
So I'm always collecting them and turning them into something else. Yeah. Thanks for picking me and sharing. All right, so I'm going to encourage everyone to just kind of wrap up that conversation and bring yourselves back in 3, 2, 1, and I love that everyone is so excited. And let's just see if we can kind of bring ourselves back in. But I'm watching people and y'all are really happy. I know. I know, it's okay. We're coming back. All right, I know we've got some former teachers, I can totally tell. Quiet coyotes. Quiet coyotes, I love you all. All right, so I'm super excited. That tells me that people were having meaningful conversations, because when we don't want them to end, they're usually good. So I'm really happy that everyone took the time to introduce themselves to other folks. We will be collaborating today, so that will not be the last time that you talk to someone else today, and hopefully you got to learn something about someone, and you'll continue to learn more. So here are my asks of us all today. And let me know if there's something I missed that you might want to add on here. I'm going to ask that we bring our full selves to the conversation, that we participate with vulnerability and openness, and that we show up to actually be present during this time. We've got a lot going on. You're probably going to have a lot going on after this. Give yourself the gift of just being here and participating. Leave space for not knowing. I do not promise that you are going to walk out and have all the answers. I can say that you will for sure have more questions. And really great questions are more meaningful than one answer. So you're going to know more. We all come from very different backgrounds with very different experiences. We might have experiences that are not visible from first meeting us. So just honor that we all have really different experiences, and that's a valuable thing. We can learn from the experiences of others, but do not expect that someone else's experience is going to be exactly like yours. It's not. My experience may not be like yours. When we do some small group sharing, be mindful. If someone is sharing something really personal to you, please do not share it out in a whole group setting without their permission. Similarly, when you are sharing in a small group, please be explicit. If you're like, I'm sharing this with you, please don't share this out, so that people can kind of honor that in terms of how they are participating, because we will be creating shared knowledge, and your experience may impact someone. So just know that you might have something really powerful that they learn from. And again, just try really hard for this 1 hour not to name your role. You name your role all the time. Just for this 1 hour, you can even name the tension that you might feel around not saying what you do. It's okay. You can just be like, I really want to say what I do right now, but instead I'm going to focus on my experience. Okay? Is there anything I might have missed that you think would be important for us to think about? Feel free to contribute. Okay, so we're going to just take a breath first to kind of actually be present and think about this. You can get yourself comfortable in your chair. You can lean back. You can roll your shoulders back. You can close your eyes. Oftentimes people get a little uncomfortable closing their eyes, and I can assure you that if the weirdest thing that someone sees today is a bunch of people with their eyes closed and breathing, they're having a very boring day. So don't be afraid to be the highlight of their day. But do what works for you. It's an invitation, it's not a mandate. So just encourage you to close those eyes if you feel comfortable. If you feel tense in any part of your body, just see if you can take a breath and relax it. And just give yourself 3 to 5 deep breaths to kind of arrive and just be here. And I'm going to be quiet, and I'm going to do the same thing. So just go ahead and take one more breath for yourself wherever you are at. And I did this for myself just as much as I did it for you all. So just a reminder, you can bring in things that help you when you're in large groups. And whenever you're ready, you can just kind of open your eyes and bring yourself back, and maybe notice if there's a shift in energy, notice in your energy what happens, notice what happens in the energy of the room as a whole. So I want to talk about why I'm here. Like I mentioned, I am an ordinary human. When you are submitting a session to Denver Startup Week, they give you space to kind of share about how you're an expert or how you might be really qualified to share about something. And I literally just said, I am an ordinary human, and this is the point. I've gone through an experience that shifted my perception of things, just as we've all gone through experiences that shifted our perception of things. But just a reminder that we all have something that we can share, and that shared meaning is really powerful. My experience of disentangling my identity from like my professional life was painful and not very fun and a little bit lonely. So I'd love to either let you know that you're not alone in that if that's what you're experiencing, or also potentially maybe just make it a little bit easier for you if I can in sharing, and just knowing that we can create this space together in terms of how we explore this. Another thing is I really believe that when we approach our lives from this perspective, like it really changes how we can create things. And we might have founders in here, we might have people who are part of startups, we might have people who are, entering new careers in tech. And when we approach it just from this place of really being like, if I fail at this, I am not a failure, I think it really just shifts what we're capable of. And so there might be some really great things that we're holding ourselves back from unconsciously because we're afraid. And so my goal is that hopefully we can just help feel less afraid through sharing, or just be okay being afraid. So I'd love to know, why are you here? And this is going to be a Slido that will come up. So the fabulous Susan is helping me. She's amazing. And I'm going to give you a second to kind of think about that, and it's going to give you like 1 to 2 words. If you've never used Slido before, there's going to be a QR code. You can pop up your phone, you can take it, and they're actually going to show up live. And I think it's only going to give you 25 characters, and that's because we could go on. So I just want to know, short and sweet, why are you here? Okay. Burnout. To learn, feeling lost. Oh, thanks for the vulnerability. Curiosity, new job, discovery. Seeking identity, finding balance, personal growth, fear, testing ideas. Support the revolution. It is. I love it. Learning, love, frustration. Yeah. So we've got to vibe. I love it. Being real, positive energy. Yeah, these are amazing. So really let your intention and why you're here guide how you participate and what you get from this and what you choose to share and how you show up with other people in the conversations that we're going to have. And thank you, Susan. All right, so I'll boop through this. Okay, so why is this important? I think we're all gonna have different relationships to why this topic is important, but I kind of wanted to highlight some of the main ones that show up to me. We might not always have the job that we have. That could be a voluntary choice, it could be an involuntary choice, it could be, we've seen a lot of layoffs. We all kind of recognize that as much as we might contribute to things in our professional environments, we are sometimes seen as disposable assets, and that doesn't feel very good. And so just acknowledging those kind of experiences. You could be making a career change. You could be experiencing burnout that is affecting your mental health. That's part of my story. You could be in a phase of life or season of life where maybe you have children, maybe you're caring for a parent, maybe you've made a lot of changes. You may also just sell your business. Let's say you're a founder and you've been building something and suddenly poof, okay, I sold it. Now what? You might also just have a life event that changes your perspective. For me, that was a friend dying that really just brought to light, whoa, am I living the way that I want to live? They're not always fun life events, but they do impact us. So really thinking about, a lot of these things are out of our control, totally out of our control. But what is within our control is our mindset and how we approach things. And we can wait until we are forced to reflect on it because it's too painful not to, or we can choose to proactively reflect and kind of engage in that on a more ongoing basis. So I'm gonna start with kind of where I ended up and then take you through how I got there. I wanna acknowledge also that it's real packaged nice and pretty. It was not pretty, okay? Not pretty at all, and I'll explain that. But what I know is that no one who actually loves or cares about me really cares what I do. There are people who don't actually even understand what I do. And I'll explain more about what I do now. And I put a little asterisk because you might be thinking, well, you don't know my family, or you don't know this person in my life. They would care what I do. And I want to acknowledge that you might possibly be right, but their perception of you is out of your control. As my old boss, Olivia, would say, that is OPP, other people's problems. So, acknowledge that the vast majority of people in your life just want you to be happy and fulfilled, and your career can be an expression of that, but they're not going to love you any less just because you change your job. Okay? I also really learned that I'm capable of creating and navigating massive changes for myself, and you'll get to learn about some of those. And also really learning, it's okay to be messy. I didn't realize how much I was really tied up in perfectionism, and if you'd asked me if I was a perfectionist, I would have been like, oh no, I was. I very much was. And I don't think it's something that goes away in a moment. It takes time, and you can catch yourself and you're like, oh, I did something different this time. I didn't have that old pattern of behavior, okay? So, my story begins in that I was actually a teacher. I taught high school visual arts, and so my journey really changing me. I saw that face, you're like, oh wow, okay, cool. Got another former teacher. It really became the fall of 2021. I'd been kind of pondering leaving teaching, but hadn't really fully decided. And in that fall of 2021, it was painfully clear that it did not fit. And this was also the beginning of what any teacher who you might talk to would express as probably the worst year of teaching they've ever experienced. The 2021-2022 school year was truly horrific. I watched the light go out of so many of my colleagues' eyes, including my own. So really, I was so frustrated because I was like, oh my God, all these pieces used to fit and now they don't. And I was angry because I wanted to put all the pieces back. It was comfortable, it was clean, it was easy, I had a career, I was great at it. And I just couldn't want it anymore. I really couldn't. And it was really scary, and I didn't know that it was actually gonna get scarier, but in a good way. So in order to actually process our relationship to work, we really actually have to think about things that we feel. And so for me, I actually had to process, what do I actually feel about my job? What do I feel frustration towards? What do I feel joy towards? What do I feel anger towards? And acknowledging that our career choices are often deeply intertwined with our life experience. And I think oftentimes, I see some people nodding, I think oftentimes we wanna think that our lived experience as a human being is super separate from our career choices, and it's really not oftentimes. They're often really deeply intertwined, and that can be uncomfortable because we're like, oh, I can just make a career change. I can do this, or I can have a different job. And you can, but if you don't actually think about the reasons why and the choices behind what led you there, you just repeat the exact same thing with a different change of scenery. Might be a slightly nicer change of scenery, but it's just gonna be the same. So what's on the right-hand side is known as the ladder of emotions, and you can find a million different variations of these. I just picked the one that resonated most with me for today. And so what I had to think about with my job was I had a lot of emotions on that lower end of the scale. Fear and stuckness. And the concept of the ladder of emotions is also that we often want to move from the bottom immediately to the top. And that's not always possible. And just that if we can move one rung up, if instead of just feeling fear and stuck, can I actually just feel a little bit depressed? Instead of feeling depressed, can I maybe just feel a little bit of despair? And then when I feel despair, maybe I actually need to get angry. Oftentimes there's a lot of other emotions underneath something that we aren't paying attention to. I'm kind of curious, can you all raise a hand if the ladder of emotions is resonating with you? Cool. And do maybe some of us have some emotions in that lower half that maybe we're not processing? Yeah, I see some faces nodding. We're not alone. So I also really had to ask myself, where do my personal patterns intersect with my professional patterns? Why did I choose this career? What was I getting from it? Whether it was good or bad, I was getting something. So that really led to me kind of sinking into what I call pattern recognition. Not a fun phase, but definitely a meaningful phase. So after I really allowed myself to feel things like sadness, frustration, anger, teaching during that time period was just so challenging, and it was hard to tap into anger because I think I was worried that people would think I was angry at my students. When I wasn't angry at them, I was angry at the situation we were all put in. And angry at the system that was asking us to take care of people but not taking care of us. And I think that that's a common theme, whether you're in a helping profession or not, that you might be putting a lot of care into people and things in your company and you're not receiving that back. So I had to really look at what were the patterns that I was repeating through work. And the patterns that I identified that definitely connected to my past experiences as a human being were my value is in taking care of others. If I'm not helping, then I am not of value. Others' needs are more important than mine. This was very much manifested in teaching, where I was often rewarded for prioritizing the needs of others. And don't get me wrong, I loved my students and I happily gave to them. But there were probably times when I gave when I shouldn't have, and that was my choice. And so I really needed to think about why was I always prioritizing other people, and why was I choosing something that rewarded me for prioritizing other people. And choosing safety is better than taking a risk, that it was dangerous to take risks. Teaching is often perceived as a very stable profession, and I think it depends on what your version of stability is, but you can be in it for a long time potentially. It is volatile as well, but for me, I was like, why did I choose something that is so locked in? Do I really want to teach the same thing at the same school for the next 25 years? There's nothing wrong with that if that lights someone up, but I was beginning to question if that was really lighting me up. And it was frustrating because I didn't want to have to think about that, but I really also had to think about, was I willing to let these unconscious patterns continue to run my life? And that is a really ugly moment when you're sitting there and you're recognizing your patterns and you're both really happy that you've recognized them, but you're also now I have to do something, and doing something differently can feel uncomfortable, especially the first few times we're doing it. And then eventually we get to a point where the new choice becomes habitual versus hard to think about. So then we kind of move into rewiring patterns and rethinking our narrative. So for me, this really looked like creating healthier patterns and kind of flipping those 3 first patterns into a new pattern. And we can form new patterns, we can form new thoughts, we can change the way that we interact. It just takes practice. And I think we often forget that as human beings, we've done a lot. You've probably already changed a ton of patterns in your life. You've probably been 8 million iterations of yourself. And so give yourself credit that you can continue to become new versions of yourself. So my patterns that I rewired was I got really comfortable at disappointing other people. I disappointed a lot of people. Yes, thank you. And that was very new for me, and that really connected to perceiving that my value was in helping. If I said no, was someone gonna hate me? Probably not. But it was really hard to say no, and especially to even say no to things that I cared about, but that I just had to acknowledge I didn't have the bandwidth for, and that if I was showing up, I was showing up half-heartedly and with no energy, which that just sucks anyone else's energy out. I also want to highlight that I might seem like a pretty joyful and vibrant, happy person right now. I was unrecognizable. If you met me at that time period, I was so cynical, and that's not my normal personality, and that's how I knew if I don't make this change, is this who I really want to stay as? I'm not saying that you'll get to that point, but I'm saying if you recognize that, just know that maybe that's an indicator of ooh, do I want to be this? And don't judge yourself, just acknowledge it. And so I also really thought about it's okay to not be liked. And I think, I can't speak for anyone else's identity, but I feel like being female, there's a lot of societal value placed on being likable. And that likability is a way of earning power. And I really had to just let go of being likable. If I said no, people might be annoyed. They might actually be pissed off. And was I willing to disappoint them to not disappoint myself? And this also really allowed me to embrace a lot more messiness and not need to have everything perfectly figured out, not need to feel like, oh my God, I have to have like the next 8 steps filled out in my life planner. I didn't realize how much I was trying to do that and how much I was judging myself for not having that. And yeah, a new thought creates new behavior. So again, kind of coming back to that, really acknowledging like this was extremely uncomfortable, like extremely uncomfortable. I'm sharing it with you now on the other side of it, but it was wildly uncomfortable. And my lovely friend Crystal is here, and I mean, she could tell you that it was not my favorite time, not my most like joyful, vibrant time of life, but it was a really important time of life. And I think that we often kind of conflate comfort with being the only thing we should experience. And so just kind of asking yourself, like, with whatever patterns you have running your own life, what level of discomfort would be involved to disrupt them? And what will it cost you if you don't disrupt them? What will it cost you if you continue with the patterns that are shaping your behavior? And this is a quote from Oliver Burkeman's 4,000 Weeks. Where in your life or work are you currently pursuing comfort when what's called for is a little discomfort? And I love that book, and I'll share more about it. So just acknowledging it's not always fun, it's not always pretty, like a lot of tears, a lot of frustration, a lot of like not feeling like I was gonna figure it out, but I ultimately did, and you will too. So this really led to some big shifts in my life. And when I really allowed myself to embrace those things, to say no, to not disappoint myself, to disappoint others, to embrace my messiness, to let it be okay to not have everything figured out, I began to like feel more expansiveness in my relationship to the career that I was questioning. I was coming from a perspective of, oh my God, I can't be a teacher anymore, but like what else can I do? I don't feel qualified for anything. My self-confidence was just like, just lower than I've ever experienced. And it was kind of humbling to be like, wow, this took me out that much. But I began to realize like I can just learn for the sake of learning and follow my curiosity. I don't need to know everything. If I try to have the next 8 steps figured out and identify a career before I've even just dabbled, that's not great either. But I desperately wanted to like fix it. I was like, I just need to know what it is. And in letting it be okay that I didn't know, I really learned a lot. So I followed some curiosities that eventually led down the path to UX research, which actually has a lot of similarities to education and teaching in that it's empathy-driven design, deeply understanding people, using my empathy that was used in teaching, but in a very different way. And I did a million informational interviews, and informational interviews are just like informal conversations that you have with someone about understanding their career path and how they kind of got there. I tapped into every human I knew to talk with people they knew about careers that I was interested in, and really learned a lot through those conversations about, oh, hey, they didn't have it all figured out either. That's really helpful to know. And I realized that I didn't have to know everything, that I just had to take the next right step. And that was a really big thing for me of like, I don't have to know 12 steps, just like one. What do I want to do next? And I can always change my path. If I take a step and I realize it's not working, oh gosh, wow, I can actually go a different direction. I'm not locked in. So this really led to kind of a new mindset. And these are kind of the core things that I took away from that really shaped my view. Healthy boundaries. I think we all can probably admit that we have some boundaries with work that could probably be refined. Am I alone? Does anyone else feel like they have boundaries that could be refined? Yes. So our boundaries are going to be individual to us, and again, that connects to our lived experience, but evaluate them early and often. You can even name it. Hey, I'm working on saying no more because I realized I'm overextended and I'm not showing up the way that I'd like to for these things. I'd love to say yes, I just don't have the capacity to be who I want to be here. Thanks for understanding. It's not your responsibility for someone else to actually understand your boundary. It's your responsibility to state it. And we don't often have control over how people perceive it. And I recognize that that's really a lot easier said than done, but it's like practice, like say it to yourself before you say it to others. And acceptance that like, I might have it figured out now, like air quotes, but I'm probably gonna have to relearn this lesson again. It'll just take a different form. So I'll get to take all the knowledge I've got now and kind of maybe bring it to a new level in whatever experience comes after that. And I think oftentimes, your perception might be, and this is me like wondering like, oh wow, she was in a very purpose-driven profession. People perceive teaching as like very purpose-driven, and it can be. It's deeply impactful. You're helping to raise other people's children and help them be the fullest expression of self. It was very purposeful. But I can attach purpose to anything I do by choosing to be my full self and how I show up. And if I am looking for my career to be the purpose, then I'm missing out on a fuller expression of myself. My career can be a manifestation and a way that I express that, but I shouldn't be relying solely on that to be like, I am a purposeful person because of blank. So just kind of like questioning why we do things and our perception of things. You might leave tech and go into teaching, and that might be the totally right path for you because you've evaluated all these things. But if you were just doing it for like wanting to be purpose-driven, you might be really disappointed. And also just really acknowledging like, I don't need everyone to understand what makes me happy. Like, I think oftentimes we want to explain ourselves, we want to be understood, and the bottom line is like, we're not gonna always be understood. There were lots of people who I love dearly who might have understood parts of what I was going through, but like they didn't understand all of it, and that's okay. Like they didn't have to understand all of it. And now, a couple years later, some of those same people are actually questioning these same things. And they're beginning to be like, oh, I'm kind of understanding where you came from now. Or like, I'm thinking about those things. I remember that conversation where you were crying, and like, I get it now. So they just might be on a different timeline, and that's okay. So again, how did I get here? You're getting the really nicely packaged version, but acknowledging all of the smaller steps. I'm a huge advocate of therapy. I think it's such a luxury to get to talk about ourselves and learn and process with another human being. And I had an amazing therapist who was really willing to like chisel into some stuff with me and call me on things in terms of like what I wasn't questioning within myself. I started surfing because I literally like needed something that forced me to be present at that time. And you can't have your phone, you can't do anything, you have to be present when you're surfing, otherwise you might get hit by someone else's board or a wave. I also shared with close friends, but I really didn't try to share everything with everyone. Because again, like you need to acknowledge other people's limitations based on who they are and what their life experience is, and not expect them to understand everything about you. And lots of reading. I will share some book recommendations. Really embracing a lot more self-compassion. I do have like a lot of mindfulness practices, and for me that shows up as meditation, but just acknowledging that I would extend so much kindness to other people that I was not extending to myself. And that was not helping me or anyone in my life. And I continue learning. And I have an amazing coach who I work with who really helps me to think about like being in a new career and how am I continuing to apply what I'm learning. And she's very focused on whole self, and kind of like we can talk about my life as a whole and my experiences and how they relate to the choices that I've made. And that has been a really great investment that I've made in myself. And just having conversations like this, like challenging myself to talk about it, challenging myself to like meet other people. Like I was a little selfish and I wanted to meet other people who want to talk about this. We don't have to think the same way, but just wanting to share in talking about this is meaningful. So, here's some resources that I would recommend. Playing Big is great for anyone who might be, I'll share this presentation, you can take pictures, but like if you don't want to take pictures, it's cool. Playing Big is great for anyone who is maybe is female identifying, and that book is really gonna speak to like, where are you hiding? Where can you show up? Who might you wanna be? Great ideas. Kristen Neff's book on self-compassion, there's a lot of science in self-compassion. So if you're kind of like, I don't know about this self-compassion stuff, or I don't know about this mindfulness stuff, they're all grounded in science. I'm not gonna give you a bunch of facts right now, but they're out there. That was really great just to kind of think about, am I being as kind to myself? And really, she talks about people who are kind to themselves usually actually have better like life outcomes. So thinking about that. 4,000 Weeks, Time Management for Mortals. It is not time management like how to plan and how to get more done. It's actually quite the opposite. It's how do you accept that you will never get everything done, and in accepting that you are always going to miss out on something, how do you prioritize what's actually important to you? And that's where that quote came from. That one was real challenging to read as I was having a friend who was ending their journey with cancer. But it really did highlight to me like that we can honor other people by living our lives to the fullest and not not trying to be someone we're not, or not trying to live a life that looks good to other people but isn't really fulfilling to ourselves. And The Big Leap, which is by Gay Hendricks, he's a psychologist. That one's really fascinating if you're interested in exploring like what limiting beliefs you might have. And he talks about something called an upper limit problem, like that when we have something going really well, we hit an upper limit problem where we're like, I don't deserve more, I don't know if I can experience this. And so we might self-sabotage in any area of our life. Your work life could be going really well, maybe you self-sabotage in another area of your life. So just thinking about that. So we're about halfway in here, and I'd love to check in with you all about, I just shared a lot. Are there any parts of my experience that resonate with you? Are there any parts that challenge you? Where might you think about yourself in your own journey in terms of like, are you feeling your feelings? Are you recognizing some of your patterns? Are you rewiring? Are you in big shifts? Is there a phase that you're experiencing that I didn't name? And yeah, like what's just in general coming up for you with that share? Hi, and I'd love to know people's names too. We'll go here and then we'll go there.
Hi, my name's Sumaya.
Hi.
So I went through a similar journey where I actually acquired a disability where I could not work. And I freaked out the first 3 months because I have a daughter and was divorced and like, how am I going to pay my bills and who am I?
Yeah.
And I love all the work you've been doing. And to your point, it's not linear.
Yeah.
Right? It's like some days are great, some days are not. But I think loving yourself and the self-compassion part is so critical. And for anyone who struggles like with anxiety, which is that little voice in your head that's like not very kind, that is like a huge factor in like getting to the other things, right?
Yeah.
So I love that you expressed that, because self-compassion has been extremely helpful. And like, I'm amazed at where I am. I've always been a productivity and get things done and an achiever. I've always been like that, but I'm learning to do it in a way where I prioritize play.
Yeah.
And I prioritize rest.
Totally. Those resonate with me too.
Thank
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Sumaya. We'll go in the back and then we'll go here. And then I'll come over here. Yeah.
Well, I've been around for a while, so I'm kind of older than a lot of you guys. And I read somewhere that we actually go through like 7 potential careers in our lifetime.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, well, this is happening kind of to everybody.
Oh, yeah.
In this society that we live in and all that. And so do you think the culture of corporations or small businesses or whoever, do you think that they should be more suited, or that they should have the capacity to be able to help people with these transitions and to identify that you're not right for this job anymore, and it's not anything you did, it's just time. Like, it's kind of built in.
Yeah.
The values, visions, missions of an organization.
I would want to work at that company. I think it really depends on company culture, because I think in some cultures that could actually be pretty dangerous if it's not like psychologically safe to begin with. But in a culture that is like psychologically safe, that values people as a whole human being, that, helps people grow and expand, to be like, hey, like, let's check in on your role. You've been in this role for 3 years. How are you feeling? Is it aligning with who you are as a person? Like, what's happening in your life that's changing your relationship to work? That would be really powerful. Maybe you should start that. That's awesome. So we'll go here, and then I'll go here, and then there. Yeah, go for it.
My name is Samantha Drosier. I think a lot of this resonates with me. I think the one thing that's missing for me personally is grieving.
Oh, yes, that's a good point.
I've had a lot of shifts in my life, and there's a lot of time to grieve, the loss of a family member that you just can't have a relationship with anymore.
Yeah.
Or the loss of what you thought your life was going to be like, and what you thought you were going to be able to accomplish, that you're like, well,
Totally. It's
that's not
different.
my reality
Yeah.
anymore, So I think that's, for me, the only
Yeah.
thing that's missing from this.
You're right, and there was a phase of grief for me, and I'm glad that you highlighted that, because I really had to like grieve and let go of who I thought I was, what I thought my life was going to be, and I really couldn't move forward until I did that. So I'm glad that you highlighted that. And I think also, you're right that we have a lot of occasions where we mark grief for other things, but like, we don't have a marker of like, hey, you completely shed your identity as a human being. Let's like grieve that you like just did that, and like a snake. There's not really like a card for that. So yeah, awesome, go for it.
So, my name's Jonathan.
Hi.
This is very appropriate for where I'm at in my business and my life right now. I'd love to hear, I don't have any answers,
Yeah.
but I'll share with you my experience, and then I'd love to hear your
Yeah.
thoughts. So my earliest passion, my earliest, from a very young age, was DJing. I've done that my whole life. And it's basically with almost everybody that knows me, even in the industry, this is like my personality, it's my character. Everybody knows me as this through my whole life. And right at a time 10 years ago when I was questioning it, I made the smart decision to start not like a DJ business, which I always have to build like a software supporting that business. Because I had an idea, and so I've basically been working on that and still working on that. I'm at a point now where like I've been through a lot of challenges in that business. My partner's leaving, and I know there's still a lot of opportunity in the business, but I realized that like I'm passionate about the business side, but the culture, which I've been in my whole life, and I still do to make money on the side, and people know me as, but it doesn't, I know it just doesn't consistently create happiness for me.
Yeah.
Like it did. Like,
Yeah.
it still does in moments, which is what's really hard, because those moments will be like, oh, wow, okay, maybe I'm wrong, but there's a lot of pain involved.
Yeah.
Too.
That resonates.
And dealing with also like the past year, like supporting with like, I didn't realize this, I'm working with a coach, like, to realize like I'm burnt out. Like, I didn't know it, like I just, like a lot of entrepreneurs just work. Life balance out the window, especially during COVID, like it got worse for me. And anyway, so I'm at a stage now where like, the thing is, like, I can close down my business, right? And even though there's opportunities to start other things, which I'm thinking about, but it's so embedded with also this character, this personality, and also a way to make money that I've had for 30 years.
Yeah.
And if I do something new, like I want to be able to change that character. Scary, but also even scary, that's actually less scary. What's more scary for me is if I continue with my business, which I still enjoy, it's like seems impossible to compartmentalize and not, like I still, this other part, like the performance side, is always gonna be there. It's all, and I just don't know how to cut it off. Like, because it's almost like I have to do that in order to understand my business and the culture to continue with it. So it's for me, it seems complicated.
Did you want feedback or?
I love it.
Okay, I'm like, I just want to make sure I'm like, did you just want, I'm like, I can just listen. I want to make sure I'm asking. Yeah, my first thought would be do you want to keep living a life where you have to compartmentalize yourself in that way? And like, it's okay if you're like, maybe for a little bit, because we can't always and don't always have the luxury of like immediately flipping a switch, nor is it always helpful to immediately flip a switch. And I would say if you're experiencing burnout, like what can you do to prioritize healing the burnout? Can you take a break? Like, can you like reduce things? Like, what can you do to get yourself out of the burnout? Because if you're in the burnout, like you're not thinking clearly, you're not making decisions from like a solid place, you're making them from a very floaty and like just flighty place, like you're not grounded. So I would say like, think about what does it cost you to compartmentalize and like, what are you afraid of? Like I made a list of all the things I was afraid of when I was making that transition and then really thinking like, okay, what's the worst case scenario? And that even included like, oh my God, do I need to just quit my job right now? Is it that bad? Which like for teachers during that time period, if you quit mid-year, like someone can actually come after your credential. Like, so there would have been real consequences if I quit my job in the middle of my year. That would be if my district was like going after me in that way. But like districts were doing that to teachers during COVID. So like really thinking about, is it that bad that I need to do that? And like, what can I mitigate to get myself to a point where I can think more clearly? So I'd say thinking clearly is probably your best first path of, action. Yeah, go for it. And we'll do like a couple more and then I have some other things and there'll be lots of time to talk, don't worry. Yeah, go for it.
Well, I just wanted to mostly say that your story really resonates with me, and I'm guessing it resonates with a lot of other people because I also went through the same kind of, the corporate world was far more bullshit than I was raised to think it was.
Yeah.
And I went through the same dumb job experience over and over again, micromanaging boss, CC me on every email you send type of stuff, and it put me to
Yeah.
a low point about 6
Yeah.
years ago, so I really resonate the experience, and I think I'm mostly through to the other side of it, except like, you know, it says like what's coming up for me as far as limiting beliefs, and what's coming up for me now is that, you know, we're here at Startup Week, and this is one of my favorite weeks of the year because I'm around people that kind of get me, but this fear, and I can, you know, just do me 100%, but that this fear that I'm going to go out into the regular world next week and just be surrounded by NPCs that just don't want me to be me, and they're getting mad at just how I behave in my day-to-day life.
Yeah, and I resonate with that because as I was like really having my realizations about why the system of teaching didn't work for me, like beyond just the daily environment and like not wanting to do the same thing for 25 years, again, there's nothing wrong with that if it lights us up. I had to be kind of selective about who I talked to about it, in that some of my teacher friends, like they didn't feel the same way, and that was okay. That's their experience, and it doesn't make it right or wrong, but maybe finding more community of people who you can talk to these things about, and just acknowledging that they might not be your colleagues, and that like they might be people in this community, and they might be people who you meet in other arenas, and maybe just thinking about what are ways that you can continue to show up a little bit more authentically every day, because like sometimes if you just like go for it, it can be jarring for yourself, and like you, maybe it's just small steps, you know, like it doesn't have to be massive, but find the community of people who you can talk about those things with. Was there another hand right here? Oh yeah, go for it.
I'm building that, Steve. So Steve, right?
Yeah.
All right. I don't know if anyone else has experienced this phenomenon, but when you start showing up really authentically, it kind of like messes with the force field.
That's a good point.
So I think that's what you're describing is like, if I show up, people act really weird around me, and I feel like it's my fault or shame comes out, something moves, and it's because you're actually influencing, like, you're like this huge positivity beacon.
Yeah.
And people don't know what the hell to do.
It's very true. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I just want to name that if anyone else feels it. Like,
Yeah.
We're with you, man.
Well, and it also asks them to confront themselves and in what ways they are or are not showing up. And sometimes people don't like that. Like you're not naming it, but like when you show up fully, we're inviting other people like, hey, do you want to be your weird self too? Like, let's be weird together. And some people are like, I don't want to be weird. I just want everyone to think I'm this way. And we're all weird. Like we're all weird. Yeah, so I'm gonna go, I saw there was a hand right here, and then I'll go one in the back, and then I can't pick everyone, I'm sorry.
I just want to acknowledge how messy this was.
Yeah.
I'm 2 years into this journey myself. I took a leave of absence, a 12-week leave of absence last year from my job.
Awesome.
Did a career pivot, and I'm right back into burnout again. And so for anyone else who's starting this journey or in the middle of it, just acknowledging that it is messy.
Yeah.
It's not linear, and it's not easy, but it is.
Yeah.
It'll be worth it.
Also, just wanting to highlight what you said about a leave of absence. Everyone should know their legal right to take a leave of absence. FMLA. Google it, find out what it means in your state, and do not hesitate to take it. It's no one else's business why you take it, and don't like wait until you're suffering so badly that you're like needing to recover first in it. If that happens to you, like that's okay. That was me. But just like you have a right to take time off. It's okay. And no one's gonna shame you. No one's gonna think differently of you. And again, you can't control their perception of you. So like even if you tidy everything up, people still might think things of you that you have no control over. So yeah, just wanna highlight that's a really great share. Awesome. No, yeah. It's not finite. Awesome, so there was one in the back and then we'll go one here and then we'll transition really quick. Yeah, go for it.
I'm so sorry to ask this, but for those who missed the first meeting,
Yeah.
can you share your closing slide or contact info?
Oh yeah, it'll be my last slide. Sure, you got it. There's me. Yeah, she'll QR code it and then we'll go back. Yeah, go for it.
I just have a question
Sure.
for you and for everyone who's like, I've done this journey, I'm in it, it's so great to be authentic. Like,
Yeah.
how do you get past the bridge of like, I'm so scared I might die? Literally, and I'm being really honest, but like,
You feel it. You feel it. You're like, I'm so scared I might die.
I'm like, I know all that. Like, I
Yeah.
recognize the patterns. I see the
Yeah.
I would love to just move, but it's like, how do you take that first step? Therapy.
Yeah, it really is. And like having someone safe to process it with, and like, I had to cry a lot. I honestly, anger was a very hard emotion for me to tap into, and I had to get angry in order to actually move on. And I think also if you're making any type of career change and you're not processing whatever residual anger you have, no one's gonna wanna hire you. You're gonna come across very differently. And so like process your anger if you feel it. Is that like sticking with you? Is that feeling?
There's lots of feelings.
Yeah, like sadness, despair, anger, disappointment, like did you feel like let down? Like, and letting it feel like wherever it's connected in the rest of your life. Like there were a lot of patterns for me in terms of how I was feeling about teaching, and just like, crap, these are like bigger life themes. So just, you might be processing emotions that aren't necessarily about this specific incident, but like that connect, that are like unprocessed, that are coming up now. So I'm gonna just like abandon my other slides because we're having good conversations. Yeah.
Just adding on to that, I think it's important to also recognize, are you actually living right now?
Yeah.
Are you living
Yeah.
at the moment, or are you just slowly dying? Like, is this?
Oh.
Yeah.
A lot of it is also connected to opportunity and like making it, and that is a big hurdle of like, what if you like literally financially can't take a leave of absence? It's not possible.
Yeah.
It's a privilege to be.
No, and you actually brought up a good point, and I wanted to acknowledge this earlier, but I did have some privilege in that I was making these decisions for only myself. I didn't have a family to think about. I didn't have anyone else's opinion to think about. And also, I didn't have anyone else to support me in these decisions. I didn't have anyone else to like help me economically. And like, yes, if you can reduce your living costs to kind of create a less stressful situation, if you can accept like generosity, like from people in your life who care about you and want to help you. Like when I first moved to Denver, I had quit teaching, I was doing a boot camp. I had lovely friends who were like, hey, do you want to stay with us while you do your boot camp? Yeah, you can come live with our family. Their names are Tyler and Eleanor. They're lovely humans. And I had to just be like, whoa, can I accept this generosity and realize that it does not mean anything about my ability to be a competent, capable, independent adult to accept help? Yeah, it's like, accept help too. And like ask for help with the people who you feel safe asking for help with. And it might come in a very unexpected way. But I believe in you.
I would just add on to that like I had a very similar tragedy to you. I lost my mother and my grandmother during COVID. And it also will help you reevaluate and get a true appreciation for those people who are there for you.
Yeah.
And so those are the ones that you want to lean into. And since then, I have a high barometer for new people that I've let into my life.
Yeah, totally. But yeah, just like letting help in and like that you are worthy of help and people want to help you, and acknowledging like where you can make those changes. Also I saved a ton of money, and I said no to a lot of things to kind of like plan for that gap. And what are like the small steps you can take now to give yourself that larger gap?
I will also say in the leave of absence, I took short-term disability. There are a lot of benefits that your organizations have that you don't know about.
Yeah.
You pay into insurance and they pay insurance for you so that you can, I was paid for the entire 12 weeks that I was not working. So there are options to look into.
Yes, tons of
Make sure
options.
that you're doing that and covering yourself as you're also thinking about options.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to take them. People take them all the time. There's nothing wrong with taking them. Yeah, cool. And then we'll go over there.
I just had a question
Sure.
for, your story of understanding you're a perfectionist and understanding that you were happy with the comfortable, right? How much of this do you think is also knowing yourself, or the journey of knowing yourself? Because we all have different propensities. I tend to be someone who is very excitable, and I'm always changing.
Yeah.
So I had the opposite problem where I needed to kind of slow down and think, and yours was comfort, stability, and I was like, no, let's blow it up. So how much of just understanding yourself and sitting with yourself do you have to do? And that goes to like your friends that are giving you advice too.
Yeah.
Like someone might, like me, would be like, no, just leave your job and you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Right? So like, talk about that process a bit, because I think people just being honest with themselves about who they are, or like doing the journey of figuring that out, really helps you know what the next step is too.
Yeah. No, I think one, know if you need to share or if you're asking for feedback, and clearly state it. I don't want feedback from everyone. I don't. But it doesn't mean I can't share with them and ask them to listen. And I think that's why I asked, like, would you like feedback? Because I didn't want to assume that someone wanted me to give feedback. And I think, yeah, you're right, knowing yourself. Like, we all have different journeys. Some of us have a journey in like slowing down and sitting with things, and some of us have a journey in like moving out of something, moving like on to something else. And so maybe finding other people who you can process with and ask questions of, and just like questioning the motive behind your behavior. And I think also looking at, I'm wanting to do blank, even though I know this behavior isn't great. What is my underlying motivation behind this behavior? Am I trying to find safety? Am I trying to have it figured out? And then when you can actually look at that, like just not judging yourself for it and being able to sit with it. I think non-judgment is another big theme of like, can you not judge yourself and just learn about yourself? But you're right, self-knowledge is a big thing. And we all have a different desire for self-knowledge, and that might lead us to make different decisions. Cool. Yeah, go for it. And then back there, sorry.
Just kind of like a forward thinking. I think I'm not alone in feeling like this was the room that I was supposed to be in this morning. And
I'm so honored.
There's so many people, like, you start talking and you start talking, and I'm like, I just want to like pick everybody's brain.
Yeah.
Is there any way that you can get like a sign-up sheet?
So actually, like, you bring up a really good point. So again, I told you I was a little bit selfish in that like I wanted to find other people who want to explore this topic. So I didn't really know what form it would take, but what I can do at the end is like, if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn or whatever way you want to connect with me, that's just the way that I have offered right now. I'll create a way for you, if you would like to share your contact information, share it, and then I can say, cool, here's something where we can all connect together and you can decide what you want to share, what you don't want to share, who you want to connect with. And I like workshops and I like talking to people, so I might do some things to just bring us together more, but I don't know what that will be. Yeah, I just wanted to share also because I want to honor that there is another speaker coming after me, and I want to make sure that we close up for them. I will happily share out this presentation. Initially, I had thought about us doing some writing and then sharing out. We had a lot of great conversations, so it didn't matter. But here's some uncomfortable questions you could ask yourself. And I'll share those with you. But again, we were going to share as a small group. We've already made a lot of meaning. So I'm actually going to have Susan pull up the Slido, the second one. It's like, I can't remember. There we go. So we're going to do another Slido. And how do you feel after our time together? And I did not limit your characters. And it's also okay if you're like, I feel uncomfortable. Yeah. Okay, cool. So we'll do that, awesome. Validated, empowered, so seen, breathing easier, more questions, clear, sad, it's okay. Grateful, breathing easier, and my people. Yeah, I do think finding people who want to talk about these things is meaningful. I love it. Yeah. And honestly, like part of why I did this is because like I said, my experience was pretty painful. It might still be painful for you, but it's probably the good kind of painful, and it can be less painful when we share it with other people and when we let other people in and when we talk to them about what we're experiencing, and that we're not meant to do life alone. We often have a lot of things that we're experiencing that are very similar, but we just don't know it. So someone doesn't need to be like you to be experiencing something similar to you, or to have something that they could share that could be meaningful for you. So just remembering that, like, and also similarly, it's not always like safe to share with everyone. There might be people who you're like, ooh, I kind of regret that. So just be like mindful with how you start your sharing and like gauge someone's capacity to meet you in that sharing. But you might be really surprised. So what I'm gonna do, oops, I clicked a button and I don't know what I did, but we can just go back to the slide deck. And you can just go to the QR code one, if you're okay with that, Susan, thank you. Awesome, and so I'll leave this up and then I think we have like 10 minutes of closing. And I saw there was a hand here, so I wanna go back to you as lovely human. Yeah.
I number one want to say this is the first session I've been in this week where AI didn't come up. I just want to make sure that happens. I wanted to just share a resource. I just met a guy at Startup Week yesterday who runs an entrepreneur rehab support group to process the grief around failure.
Oh, that's meaningful.
To try again. And he gave me his card and I've got it, so come find me if you want.
Love that.
I can't advocate for him because I just met him.
Yeah. Cool, awesome. I saw there was a hand back there. Yeah, go for it.
Thanks for sharing your journey.
You're welcome.
I'm curious as you were switching from one career to the next in your career process.
Yeah.
How or when did you make the decision to share this with others?
A great question. I think you need to be mindful about sharing in your professional environment because once it's out, it's out. And put yourself first. Like, think about what is going to be best for me in this, because that's what the business would do. And that's harsh, but like, it's true. So like, put yourself first in terms of the priority of sharing in your professional life. In my personal life, I started to share with people because I was like, oh, this sucks so much, I'm in so much pain. But I kind of was like selective about who I really went into depth with. And the one thing I did do is I told everyone humanly possible that I was exploring a career transition. And I let my network help me. Like once people knew, like, oh wow, like initially I was thinking about instructional design. And then I realized that would make me want to poke my eyeballs out. I don't think I want to do that. But I did a ton of informational interviews. People were like, oh, I know so-and-so, or oh, I know this person. And they made a connection and I would have like a 30-minute conversation with them. And the other thing that I did when I did informational interviews is I always just followed up with like a thank you and one thing that impacted me that I was taking away from that conversation, because we all like to feel like we offered someone something. And now it's fun because I get to be in the position of helping people by doing an informational interview with them. So I was really mindful about the sharing. But just trust yourself and kind of like don't feel like you need to have it 100% figured out. My career transition took like almost an entire year and a half from the time I started thinking about this to actually landing my next role in UX. Like my role started in late January, early February. So yeah, did that answer the question? Did that help?
The reason I asked that question is, you may know this already, but through the stages of meditation,
yes. Thank you. That's so kind. That's really meaningful. I do have a meditation practice, and so that's really that makes me feel very special. Thank you. Yeah. Do we have any other contributions or thoughts? Yeah, go for it. I'm so sorry.
Hi. One of the other resources I wanted to share is a meetup group called the Denver Founders Network.
Oh, cool.
And it is a place to have authentic community with other people in this space.
I love it.
People have come to Denver Startup Week, whether you're a founder or you work in this space. It's a place for you to bring your weird self.
I love it.
And feel seen and talk about the ups and downs. And I just wanted to share that resource.
Yeah, that's awesome. Can I take a selfie with you all? Because this is like a big deal for me. I am just like shocked that I did it, and I am really happy I got to share it with you all. Thank you. All right.